in business, we all know you got to niche down. You've got to niche down to really hone in on a market. Well, sports does this brilliantly. If you think about, out by you, the Seattle Seahawks, they are very niched in what they do. They play in one stadium. They play in one stadium. They're not all over Washington saying, let's just build a little stadium over here in Tacoma and play cricket. Or let's go down here to Oregon and let's try to get a fan base around bowling. Like, no, we play football. We play it in this stadium. Every position is niched and nuanced. And
Okay.
we're going to give you tons of content for free. And this is where the entrepreneur space comes in. They come in, they play this game, and you can drive all over, listen on the radio for free. You don't have to spend any money to become a fan of the team. What they do is they put on such a good product in such a niche space that you listen to a game with your dad, and then eventually it's like, I'd love to go to a game. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna go buy a ticket so I could take my son to a game. But I'm not gonna spend big money because I don't know if it's gonna be any good. You're gonna buy the nosebleed tickets, right? And you go in and you sit down and you go, this is awesome. What a great experience. And then, but down below, like, they're getting better access. They get better food. They get away from kind of the drunk people up in the upper levels, right? It's better access. They look down even further. Those people, they're next to the field. They're getting autographs from the players. Wait a second. Okay, how much is that ticket? But then you have luxury box. You could be in there with business owners and entrepreneurs, all these different high-level people spending more money, better access, better food. And what people don't realize is they play one game. They're not building multiple businesses and stretching themselves out. One game, one message, but they have multiple tiers to offer to people, multiple levels at all different price points around one idea. So that's when it kind of hit me. I'm like, instead of me having to have all these different business ideas, I'm going to have a landscaping business. I'm going to do a membership. I'm going to do a YouTube channel on gardening. I'm going to write a book about devotionals. We stretch ourselves in all these different ways. Nothing gets our full attention. The best we could do is 15, 20% on each of them, and we stagnate and we burn out. And I hear this from people all the time, as opposed to taking one idea and creating multiple levels around it, including free content like we're doing right now. If you think about sports, they give interviews for free. After the game, they're being interviewed for television stations, radio stations. We do the same thing here. So that's where the model came from. So we just basically construct the thing. We take one idea, create multiple levels of potential income streams around it, and build from there.
Right, and that's maybe an important distinction to draw. Like, we're talking about this as a metaphor for a content business, or as a metaphor for a personal brand, or something that you're doing where you're, playing the part of the team, or like the game is the product, right?
Yeah.
And all these different content channels and different levels of access, ranging from, hey, it's free content that we're putting out there for everybody's enjoyment, education, and entertainment, all the way up to the many tens of thousands of dollars to be on the 50-yard line luxury box type of thing. Exactly.
And when you see this, and then when you start shifting your mind just like 10%, like 10 degrees to the side, and seeing a different model, something that maybe used to be a service-based business can turn into a multiple income stream business. Meaning, if you're a coach, for instance, your coaching is at a certain rate, but when you realize, hey, that's the closest access that somebody's going to get to you. So that should be a higher price because that's your time. Well, your coaching.
Yeah, that's like one-on-one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but sometimes we think that's just the business. I'm a coach. Well, does it just have to be that? And you wind up undercharging a lot of times for it. And then you wind up getting 20 clients and you're burned out. As opposed to, hey, the coaching is my box seats and there's only a couple of spots, and that's a higher ticket item. But from there, it doesn't have to be one-on-one for me to help you. I can create a membership, right? Where you have some access to me, but it's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many. But then from there could be another level where, hey, the content we're creating in here is another level. It's a little bit lower price if that's where you're at, and you're not getting as much access, all the way on down to content where you get no access, but we're helping you. That's where the price points shift. And then you go even beyond the coaching to masterminding or live events. You can go from free to luxury in any of these spaces, including a service-based business.
Yeah, we've seen that, breakdown. Maybe the one-on-one is like the almost the done for you, and then there's the group or membership is like the done with you, and then like the pre-recorded stuff is the DIY. It's like you're gonna do it yourself, where like you can consume our stuff and go do it yourself. So that's interesting. So you see this as a path for service providers to leverage their time and income a little bit better, to stop trading hours for dollars as much, to say, okay, I'm going to kind of break out, use some different pricing tiers, basically, to segment out
Without
the
doubt.
audience and deliver the most value I can for where people are at in their journey.
Oh, without a doubt, because I think so often we get stuck in this is the way it is. And it's not just service-based providers, it's content creators. Some of the people, and just hobbyists. Nick, some of the people that we've talked to in this space that have built this have been phenomenal. I might even mention it to you. There's a woman, Deborah, we had in our community. She has a murder mystery quilting membership.
Love it. Love it. Keep going.
31
How does it work?
3,100 paying members at $100 a year. And
Wow.
here's how it works. She creates a template for a murder mystery story that goes on throughout a year. So every month there's a different clue to it. And these quilters quilt, that month. And then they start figuring out, is it this? Is it that? And together as a community, they go through this and eventually they figure out who it is. They do it together and then they sign up again next year. She saw a hole in the market. She saw, because she was in this space, quilters that are interested in murder mystery stories. That's why we talk about niching down, right? Because she said,
combining these two, we talked about this recently, combining like these two concentric circles of like, well, I'm into this thing and I'm into this other thing that doesn't necessarily seem related, but maybe there's an overlap there.
If you can do that, you own it. You own the space. So she saw in her world, she owned, I think, a yarn shop or a quilting shop. And she said, they're all into this. She said, nobody's going to like this. Well, now who's her competition? Nobody. And if you're at all into murder mysteries and quilting, you're signed up for her thing.
Yeah, it becomes a no-brainer. Like, well, it's the only game in town.
It's the only game in town. There's a guy that we've talked to. He has a yoga membership. So he used to help with gymnastics. And he realized, he had a yoga membership, and he realized people were very much into gymnastics from there and handstands from competitions. So he kept diving deep into it, and he figured out, a handstand membership. This guy blows people's mind. He's got a 7-figure handstanding membership.
No way.
7 figures. And the one that
teaching people how to do handstands?
Yeah. Well, because you think about when you niche down, now we need all different types of techniques. We did the more niche you go, everybody thinks you get bored when you niche down. When you niche down, you get into the nuance of everything, and then it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It's one of the biggest misconceptions in this space. If I niche down, I'm going to be bored. Like, no, all your options of ideas and content open up. All
right, let's break down the handstand membership in terms of this stadium model. Like, what's his content stack or what's his pricing stack look like?
I think it's a $10 or $20 membership. And I haven't detailed in terms of the stadium model. I was giving you examples of the memberships. But what they all have, it's the same thing. Hey, do you want this community access with what they have? Do you want more attention with me? Do you want more attention with my coach? Do you need almost like private training on this? There's all different, and you can create it. You can create 2 levels. You can create 6 or more, because you can also have content that you sell. At a stadium, they've got a concourse, and we take advantage of this. There's a concourse where you buy products. So think about this. If you have these different levels, you have the one-to-one, you have the one-to-many, community, you have the content, you could then create courses and products for your niche and then sell them in your concourse. So he can sell a course on, a certain type of handstand technique that can be a standalone product. You don't have to be a part of a membership for it. So it gives you this, what you want to do is you build that stadium so you're not going in all different directions. Everything's relating to that one niche.
Yeah, one example that comes to mind, this is from years ago on the podcast. I don't know if the business is still structured this way, but this is Colin Jones from Blackjack Apprenticeship, teaching people how to count cards, professional blackjack player, like fascinating niche, and, free content, YouTube, blog, does really well with that stuff. At the very low tier, I don't know if he still has this, but he had like a $3 app, I want to say, like, help practice the repetition for it. And he had a $300, video membership, like pre-recorded lessons, that kind of thing, and access to, members only podcast, that type of deal. And then, at the top tier was like, come hang out with me in Vegas, maybe $10,000. I don't know what it was, but like, and every year, you'd have maybe a couple times a year, have a bunch of people come down to Vegas and go like, do the thing in person. And so it was like, that was always stood out as an example of this, different levels of pricing tiers. And it comes, really similar to like Perry Marshall's 80/20 sales and marketing, where he talks, I think he uses the stadium as an
You did a
example
little bit,
in
yeah.
there as, you know, at every level, 20% of the people would pay more. At every level, 20% of the people would pay more. And you kind of start, leveling up what you're able to build on top of that.
I think it's just not talked about enough. And people could really enhance their business with it. The amount of people I talk to that have a high-end product, right? A high-end coaching thing, but they're at the whim of somebody canceling and their income comes from only a couple of sources, right? So what they're basically doing is building a stadium and saying, we're only going to open up the really expensive seats for you. The rest of the stadium is going to be empty. We're not going to even offer it. Like, you can then take that same content and you can build that up in different ways. Because if you have 30 people willing to pay you big money, you've got 300 people willing to pay you medium money, and you have 3,000 people willing to pay you the smaller money. It's all around the same idea. Nick Pavlidis says it's great. He goes, I'll give you all the information. What you pay me for is access and implementation. And with a stadium, what you pay for is access. And it's not an upsell, because I'm kind of so tired of that word of like, upsell your people. Like, my people don't want to be upsold, but they want options.
Sure. That's a better way to phrase it.
They want options.
Do you have a fear, or you see, like, my pushback would be like, if I'm only opening up the luxury boxes and all of a sudden I, uncover the cheap seats, like, I'm going to cannibalize what maybe was my core business here, especially if I'm doing high-end coaching and like, I'm not, maybe I'm not maximizing that anymore. Like, a certain percentage of those people will drop off and say, I'll just take the cheaper option.
Again, it comes down to the access that you're giving. People, we've all been in it. Like, I always pay for the VIP because I want to be in the room with the people. But there's also people that are going to buy general admission. When you think about even a live event, it's the same exact model. Will you lose people? Possibly, but you're always going to lose people. There's always going to be people that drop, but you're always going to have people that want the best. You always have people that want the access. So when you have it, hey, Nick Loper's, on the panel and you get VIP and you get to talk and have lunch with Nick, there's always going to be people that are going to pay for that. But there's also going to be people that will pay for the lower price thing. I'm not, in terms of, I think it could be scarcity minded, like, I'm going to lose them. I think you have options to fill all those spots as long as you do the content and the connection and making the offers you need to do.
Yeah. Any other crazy examples? I need an intro to the handstand guy for sure.
There's a doodling community that I was just like, is this even real?
Like doodling?
Doodling. Like, I'm not talking like professional doodling. I'm talking take the back of your notebook and doodle something. So what they realized was there's a lot of doodlers in the world. And what were they missing? They were missing community. They're sitting on the bus or wherever, and they're at school, and they're making these cool little drawings, and I want to be an artist or whatever it is. So they decided to let's do a $5, I'm not sure what it is now, I think it was $5 a month doodling membership, and we're going to have doodling challenges. Ever think there would be something like a doodling challenge? They make
amazing.
Yeah, here's this idea. Let's go doodle, and we'll do it in small groups. Hey, doodle with your buddies, bring community. Thousands of people, paying $5 a month for an amateur doodling community. So whenever somebody says, my niche it's too narrow, I'm afraid. The narrower you get, build that audience, you own it. And then from there, same thing. They pay for access so you can have that, but I can guarantee you there are people that want a higher level of access as you go down the line. It comes often from a foundation of something you're already doing. Something you're already doing or something you already have trust in. It could be a job that you're doing, but you're really well respected and well known in terms of leadership, right? Let's say you've given speeches for your company, blah, blah, blah. Wait a second, this always resonates. This thing that I talk about, let me start talking to people about this. Is this something that I could build off on my own? So there is back end work and there's a lot of foundational work that happens before the major success comes from it. But there's just amazing examples within the space.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of maybe one pushback would be, with the example of the murder mystery, like, okay, it's a lot of work to build and it lasts the whole year, but it makes sense if I got 3,100 people paying for it. Like, I'm okay putting that in. But like other times it's like, well, maybe I dumped everything I know into this online course and it's like a one-off sale. And like, have you seen people transition something like that into something that's more recurring, or how they
Well,
structure it?
it's so she has it where, they get the offer the next year is the next, it's a whole different story.
Sure.
And what she learned, and we've all heard this, is they come for the content, but they stay for the community. We see that with our memberships.
Yeah.
So what she learned, so she had a great story, and I'll introduce you. I think she'd be a great guest for you. But she had a story where after 1 or 2 years, she thought it was all about the content. She thought it was all about the content she's creating. Well, one of her members had their house burned down 6, 7 years ago, and she lost all of her quilts. And so the community, the people in her community teamed up to buy all the materials from all the quilts that she had lost and go redo her quilts for her and send it to her. And that was the moment she was like, this isn't about quilting. This is about the community we brought together. So those people don't want to leave each other. I'm in this space too. Once I get involved in community, if I know, like, and trust the people, that's kind of a family to me. So the key is building community around it. It's not about having a one-off sale. You want to, and when you have a community and membership, you continually bring them more value than what they're paying, and then the retention goes from there.
Right. The old saying, if you want recurring revenue, you got to solve a recurring problem. And if there's something that's going to keep these people coming back, and that's, I guess, on you as the business owner, where it's maybe less obvious than the Seahawks. Well, every Sunday we play another game, and it's kind of this natural built-in excuse to keep coming back. But you got to build that in to have an excuse for people to keep engaging with you and being part of that community.
That's exactly spot on. When you think about it in terms of having a forever challenge for your people, it's a really interesting way to think about it. You think about Taekwondo, karate. Here's a funny story for me. My son's in Taekwondo or martial arts, and he just became a recommended brown belt. So he's getting there, a couple of years into it. And I looked at his sensei and I was like, you got me. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, I'm never quitting. We're never canceling this payment. You got me. And he said, so your structure is so perfect. And I never saw it before. You think about their forever challenge that they have. Their motto is, once you become a black belt, now you're a beginner. What a brilliant business model, if you think about it. You're coming back to become a second-degree black belt. There's a forever challenge there. It's almost the way to start when you're building these things. What's the forever challenge? So for us with memberships, it's not just creating a membership. And it's not just creating a membership that gives you time freedom and location freedom. It's creating a membership that gives you a stadium, that you have multiple streams of income, that you're not reliant on any of them for your income. There's a forever challenge of building out a stadium, and people love that challenge. When you can start thinking in terms of a forever challenge, it really opens up their mind in terms of, I want to stick around, I want to be a part of this community, and I want to be inspired by the others doing it. Taekwondo, martial arts does it brilliantly, and nobody talks about it.
That's an interesting. I like the concept of your forever challenge, and what's the problem that's never going away, right? Yeah. What journey are you on that we can be along the ride, with you for? So, that's something that I like.
Awesome.
All right. Any final thoughts or examples on the stadium model here?
What I love so much about this is it brings predictability in terms of income. I think for so many entrepreneurs, so many solopreneurs, the up and down of what their income is really frightening. It's scary sometimes, and it runs people out. They burn out because you see people that have really great months and then nothing months, and you see that in the real estate world. I see people that have $40,000-$50,000 months and they have nothing, and that irregularity just kind of stresses them out. I love predictable income as an entrepreneur because that time freedom and that financial freedom allows me to now build the next stadium to what we're doing. It allows me to say, okay, I got time and I got money. What's the next thing I want to do? Okay, I want to do events now. Now I have the time and money without the fear of creating the next thing, because as an ADHD entrepreneur, which I am, I get kind of bored pretty quickly with things. I don't want to just keep doing the same thing. So I need those challenges, but I don't want those challenges at the risk of any type of financial struggle. So what this does is it gives you the multiple income streams in predictability that allows you to keep growing, staying challenged, but also keep growing your business.
Right. It's stressful to be starting completely from scratch every month. Mm-hmm. And even though, and I've talked about this too, like it's kind of the situation that I'm in, even though the track record of revenue now going back 10 years, pretty predictable, pretty reliable, but it's still starting over every
month.
time. And so I think if we can look at the stadium model and see what are the incremental, maybe not starting completely from scratch because it's a lot to build, a lot of different tiers to think about building like from the ground up. But if you have something that's already operating, what inspiration can you take from this? I mean, they've got season ticket holders, they've got the luxury boxes, they've got the nosebleeds, they've got sponsorships, they've got products, they've got merch, they got free content. Okay, what are the different little incremental streams you can layer on, hopefully smooth out that revenue curve, especially if you're in like a freelance or service provider space, and draw some inspiration from that to tack on your next income stream. We got more with Vincent in just a moment, including his business idea donation for you right after this. All right, we're back with Vincent for round two. This is Donate a Business Idea round. This is something that you would start if you only had more time, or something that ought to exist in the world. What have you got for us here?
Yeah, it's not a curated business idea, so I hope you're not disappointed. But we homeschool our 3 kids. We've homeschooled for 9 years, and I just see a lack in the business space of training kids to be more prepared for adulthood. And I'm not sure if there's a business idea, but I'm seeing
Okay.
I mean, financially, so we're in this phase with our kids, where our 2 oldest, where there's 2 big financial things for you to graduate from this house from. It's your investing, and it's purchasing your first property. Because when you look around, all everybody's complaining about is nobody's ever going to be able to buy a house.
Right.
You're 40 years old, you still haven't bought a house, and you haven't built up a net worth or any investing. Where did this come from? Where was the training, or what was the lack of training that allowed us to get there? And I really think if we can get parents and kids on board from 14 to 18, and instead of thinking about just college, which is the only thing people think about, is what are you interested in doing? What can you do to make money in that space? And how do you take that money and A, start investing, and B, start saving money for your first property? Those 2 things, if those 2 things were solved with most teenagers going into the 20s or late 20s, this world would be a radically different place. I can't go into the public school system and change this, but I think there's a necessary, there's such a gap in our world right now of teaching these things, where they all come out with this student loan debt, a job they don't like, no money saved, and nothing in the horizon at all to even purchase a property. I think it's hurting our youth and our future.
Yeah, definitely a huge addressable market. Like everybody 14 to 18, right? How do we, hashtag adulting, like how do we train you to be a productive member of society and not get yourself into financial trouble in your 20s? What kind of structure would this take? 'Cause I can imagine a lot of 14 to 18-year-olds not really wanting to sit through another, class, whether in person or virtual. So just kind of curious, like what kind of messaging and how would you go about bringing this to market?
This is going to be something, once our stadium is built and there's more time, there's more just thinking, like, I'm going to have to do something with this, because we did a youth entrepreneur school a couple of years ago, and we stopped it because I thought I would be working with the parents and the kids. That was the plan. Well, what happened was, just like school, a lot of the parents just basically dropped their kid in front of it and said, okay. I'm like,
have fun. Yeah.
I got 3 kids. I don't need any more kids. I don't need to be, bugging your kid to do the work. This has got to be a parent-kid thing. It has to be. From what I've learned, this is not going to come from the school. It's not going to come from the teacher. This is where the relationship with your child, parents' relationship, that's where it's going to have to come from. I'm convinced of that. So somehow we've got to get the parents on board to realize this is important, and probably way more important than what college they go to.
Yeah, I was very grateful to, even, I wish I was half as smart as I was at 16, right? Like there's this inflated sense of, where you are in the world, but you had a decent financial ground game thanks to mom and dad. Mm-hmm. And so there's some level of that avoided, you still made plenty of mistakes,
of course,
and some really expensive ones, but maybe avoided some others by virtue of that. So maybe this is taking the structure of a a binder or a series, an outline, first structure for the parents to like, hey, start sprinkling this
Yeah.
in high school. You're eating breakfast in the morning. Hey, have you thought about, setting up an investment account? Or, I know it's hard to get excited about, an 8% rate of return when you're 17 and you only have $500, but it's, trust me, the compounding will start to work in your favor if you give it time.
If you got together all these adults and you put them in a room and said, at 16 years old, do you wish somebody would have sat down with you and said, put a couple of grand a year away into this account, and here's what it would have looked like? I tell my kids, like, my next dream, I want a beach house on Anna Maria Island, which is about 40 minutes from us. That's the next thing that I want.
Okay.
I say to them, if I would have done what we're doing right here, we'd be talking about this in the beach house.
Yeah.
If I would have done that. Not that it's about material stuff, but to me, it's about freedom. Financial freedom allows you to do the work you love to do and to avoid the work that you don't want to do. And I think that's so necessary for as kids get older to realize I'm 42 in a job that I don't like. I got 3 kids and now it seems like there's no way out. So I'm just going to watch Netflix and drink and, whatever. It's like it leads down these paths. If we can get them even at a couple $1,000s a year into an investment and start saving for that house, I think it's going to be a big deal. So that to me is something that could radically change the future for so many people if we focused on that instead of what we just basically currently focus on.
No, I like this one. Very huge addressable market, really important, very mission driven, and lots of different directions that you can take it. So if you do run with this as a listener, definitely let us know. And I like the idea. Maybe there's a future roundup episode in the, ask a bunch of people for advice. What do you wish you knew? What do you know now that you wish you knew at 18? And we'll play that one for you. Round 3 is the triple threat. We'll start off with the best marketing tactic that either you're using yourself lately or a member of your community is using.
Best marketing tactic. We've been really focused, and there's nothing new about this, but on long form social media. Excuse me. I had a cough that I was holding off on. We've been really focused on long form social media in text format. And what I'm seeing with it is, and it's nothing new. It's nothing new, but people are so inundated with short form, quick hit content, whether it's the videos, whatever, that people aren't thinking as much or aren't being challenged to think as much. And we're having challenges within our community just to create more long form written content. And the responses have been phenomenal. It's been fantastic. And it's such a basic thing. It's such a basic thing to do, but I'm challenging myself daily, write something every day that to push yourself a little further. And what's funny is the responses that we're getting, myself and a lot of people in our community, from just that short form content. That's just a little bit different than what they're seeing from everybody else. It's a little bit different than a post or a meme or a quote or a real quick one. Really putting your thought into what you believe in and establishing your personal brand around it. That's a simple, quick one that anybody could start today that we've been doing, and it's been very effective.
Okay, stops the scroll, gets people thinking. And I saw yours from this morning. It was like, hey, 8 years ago, I was talking with Kerry Green at this podcast event. And he's like, hey, you ought to go chat with Nick. And, long story short, we've been doing these shows for a long time.
Well, just think about that. Think about the difference between, hey, pretty cool. I'm going to be on, Nick Loper's podcast today. Thumbs up, right? That type of a post versus, let me give a little more, let me spend 30 minutes writing and editing and become
more context.
Yeah, become a better storyteller. We can do this with anything. We could do this with any idea. You can take a quote that you were just going to post just so you get some engagement and flesh that out in terms of a real story over a couple of paragraphs and make people go, oh, this person really thought about this. I like the way they think. We get a lot of clients and members because they go, I just like the way that you approach your content. It literally leads to sales, and it's nothing different than just spending a little more time in terms of telling a story within your content. And I'm just doing it in written form, not even in terms of recording, just to see how this is working. And the results, I'm pretty impressed with it so far.
Yeah, this is something that can go on Facebook, can go on Twitter, it can go on LinkedIn, like something that is a text-based platform and start to get some engagement that way.
But
I remember so early on, I was doing the 500 words a day challenge, and I had this little tracking spreadsheet, and that was me trying to develop a similar writing habit. And at that stage, a lot of it went on to the blog, or it was chipping away at a book project, and so it wasn't necessarily this long form, social media type of stuff, but it was developing that writing habit. And a lot of that writing still lives on today in the form of, emails or like old blog posts and definitely in the books. So I like this habit of trying to write something every day, because writing is thinking in a lot of ways. It's like trying to build that muscle. All right. The second question in the triple threat is a favorite tool of yours that you have recently discovered, or just something that you're enjoying right now.
yeah, it relates back to the first answer that I gave. I just saw an interview recently with Jerry Seinfeld, and I'm kind of obsessed with his, I don't want to say work ethic, but the way that he's gone about, because he's 70 years old now. And culturally, it's phenomenal what he's done. But what I love is his work ethic. I wrote about him in my latest book, and he talked about don't break the chain. I'm not sure if you've heard of this.
Yeah.
He talks about write a joke every day. The key to being a comedian is to write a joke every day and then mark it off on your calendar with a big red X. And the only job you have is to not break that chain.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of all content creators, that's one of it. So I just saw him talking about a book that he read by George Burns, who's a comedian, old guy, even when I was a young kid. And he read his book way back in the 70s, I think it was. And they said, what takeaway did you get? And he said that the takeaway he got was George Burns wrote for 1 hour a day about his comedy or sketches or whatever it was. And he was like, really need to write an hour a day. And he started studying the people that did it and the people that didn't do it. And he saw the people that didn't do it were the ones that would have a quick hit and then they would drop off. And he was like, oh, so that's what led to the don't break the chain. So I started thinking about that. We talk often within our world and our teaching, there's two things that matter: content and connection. If you have consistent, unique content, and if you have consistent connections in relationships that you do on a daily basis, it's really difficult to fail in this world, because that leads to all the offers and everything you create. So for me, it's just 2 hours. It's 2 hours a day on my own, 1 hour of writing and content creation. I sit down, and then 1 hour of connection, reaching out to people that I haven't heard from, reaching out to people in my community, reaching out to say thank you, doing what Carrie Green did, bringing people together. I spend 1 hour on each of those things every day. And that is the cornerstone for everything else that we build.
And that's your don't break the chain type of activity.
If I do those things 5 days a week, it's just wild how many times I'll create a piece of content and then I'll reach out to the people that responded to that content, right? That's why I love social media. Everybody hates it. I love it. You get real-time feedback on your work. And then they'll say, oh, I love that post. Hey, we'll have a 20-minute conversation. They'll be like, I was thinking about starting a membership. Hey, I probably should talk to you. And then all of a sudden we talk, and then they may or may not join something that we have. And I go, I didn't even have to make a sale. All I had to do, create content and connect. That builds the relationship. Sometimes I need what they have. But I don't need all these other things that people are selling, because all I really need is my content and my connection. So those are my cornerstones right there.
All right. No, that's cool. I like that that breakdown. And so maybe the tool would be like the visual of the calendar. Don't break the chain. Like, these are the most important activities in my business. As long as I keep doing those consistently, then positive things are going to happen.
Because so many people say, I just don't have time. It's like, everybody has time. You're just choosing to do it in a different way. And I love that question, because the more I get to know people, like, really, like, do you not spend 4 nights a week watching baseball? Because I kind of know you do. You don't have time to do it, or you're just choosing not to. It's like, to me, it is a non-negotiable, because it's just what's worked for so long. But I've made it a specific habit.
Right. You got to prioritize what's important to you. Well, yeah. I mean, by definition, you prioritize what's important to you. All right, let's bring it home with your favorite book from the last 12 months.
I don't think this is brand new, but it was brand new to me. So this book, I'm not sure if you've ever read it, Your Music and People by Derek Sivers. Derek Sivers is one of my favorite authors. He's so unconventional. He's a former, he owned CD Baby. If you remember CD Baby back in the day, and he sold it for millions afterwards.
Well, I know his other book, Anything You Want.
Anything You Want, great book.
was really good, but I never heard of this one.
Yep,
it's called Your Music and Your People.
Your Music and People, not your people. Your music and people. And I emailed him about it, because there was a line in it that I just loved. we think alike. And he said, this is my most underrated book. So he was really happy to get an email about this book because this is the one
Okay,
that
nice.
talked about the least. So I'm like, it's my job to promote it. But the crazy thing about this book is it's not written for business owners or entrepreneurs. It's actually written for the music industry and how musicians can stand out with their marketing. But the examples in here are so good for all of us to use, and they're unconventional and they are relational and they're generous and they're personal, but they're not hacks. They're not tech hacks. It's trying different things in different ways just to see. His whole motto is everything's a test, right? So people worry about like, what if my social media post doesn't get engagement? It doesn't matter. Try a different way. Keep going. I just love his approach to creativity. So that's been my favorite book this year that I've read.
Very nice. Thanks for that recommendation. Have not read that one myself, so add it to the list for sure.
Cool.
MyMembershipFreedom.com. That's where you can find Vincent, all the stuff that he's up to. Go check out the quiz to find out if a membership model is good for you. MyMembershipFreedom.com. To recap what we covered today, we covered the stadium model of entrepreneurship, how you can draw inspiration from your favorite sports teams to unlock new income streams in your business. We talked about a business idea about training kids for adulthood, preparing them to be adults in terms of investing, in terms of property and purchasing, just in terms of, not making financial mistakes in your 20s. And then we talked about what's working right now, long form, text-based social media content, building that writing habit, not breaking the chain, dedicating an hour or 2 hours a day to the most important tasks in your business. And then finally, the book was Your Music and People. We'll link all that stuff up in the show notes along with MyMembershipFreedom.com. Vincent, thanks so much for sharing your insight. Once again, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this content free for everyone. That's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, let's go out there and make something happen. And I'll catch you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show. Hustle on.